Hello, my name is Dr. David Edward-Ooi Poon. I'm a Canadian, born and raised. I'm a doctor. I'm founder of the grassroots Canadian group Advocacy for Family Reunification at the Canadian border. And I'm in love. I'm in love with an Irish national. I'm in love with a girl. She's a nurse. She's getting her credentials to work as a nurse in Canada. I'm in love with a girl who had a negative COVID test, who had an exemption from the Canadian Embassy in Europe, who had documented evidence of our relationship, our life together, and our living situation, along with bills. I'm in love with a girl who arrived in Toronto, was told she does not fit the criteria of family, and sent back to Europe that same day. But this is not the whole story. This is the story of Sarah Campbell, a young woman recently diagnosed with cancer, who's not allowed to be with her UK fiancé who cannot come into Canada. This is the story of Graham Miller, whose breastfeeding partner cannot come into Canada to take care of their newborn baby. This is the story of Patricia Janes, an elderly woman with brain cancer, dementia, and in palliative care, whose adult children cannot come to Canada and say goodbye to their mother. This is the story of Donna McCall. Same story, but she died 2 days ago. This is the story of the faces of advocacy who today are being separated at the Canadian border because the government of Canada does not believe that family is essential. I want to make it abundantly clear to everyone watching this, to everyone hearing this, and to anyone who wonders what we stand for. We are not asking for open borders. We are just asking to be together. When the orders in council in March, the travel restrictions, were placed, there were two. One for the international non-US travel restrictions and one for the US travel restrictions. At that time, not even married families could come together. If you were having a baby, you couldn't come together and see the birth of your child. On June 8th, the orders in council were amended, and we thank the government for that, to allow family reunification. This allowed married couples, common law couples, dependent children of Canadians, so that's 22 years younger, as well as parents of Canadians to come into Canada. However, this egregiously left out two significant groups. Number one, adult children of Canadians. Adult children who just want to come in, take care of mom as she's sick. Adult children who want to come in and be with their father as the world goes through a horrific pandemic. Group number two, committed couples, committed partners of Canadians. So these are the people, your fiancés, who are waiting from the UK to get their work permit to come to Canada and work here and contribute to society. They're not allowed in. These are the snowbirds who 6 months spend in Florida, 6 months send back here. Apparently, according to them, according to the government, that 10-year relationship is not family. This includes people of the LGBTQ plus community who are unable to get married or declare common law for various political, social, religious, or otherwise legal reasons. These are the forgotten people in the current travel restrictions as defined in the orders in council. These are the forgotten families of voting Canadians. Foreign national adult children and committed partners of Canadians are not allowed in the country. Today, I want to make it clear and I want to declare it loudly. This is unacceptable, and we are asking the government to produce a plan and a timetable that is safe, consistent, and compassionate. There's no question that COVID-19 presents an unprecedented, horrific scenario, not only for Canada, not only for the rest of the world, but for all of humanity. There's no question that it is a concern. Family reunification must be done safely. This can be done through amendments in the orders in council to allow family reunification to happen, and for those amendments to make it very clear what public health safety measures can be done to keep Canadians safe. I'll give an example. Foreign national NHL players are allowed into Canada. When we ask the Minister of Health why that's the case, they say, well, there's a very, very good quarantine plan. And you're right, I read it. It is a very, very good quarantine plan. In addition, according to TSN, when the Stanley Cup finals are coming, not only are the married spouses of NHL players allowed in, but also their significant others. So I want us to ask each other, that sounds pretty much like committed couple, doesn't it? Now, they have a very, very good quarantine plan. So we asked the Government of Canada to please offer one for voting Canadians to allow adult children and committed partners into the country. I asked the Government of Canada point blank, does a marriage certificate lower your chance of COVID-19? Does a hockey stick? Does being the significant other of a foreign national NHL player lower your chance of COVID-19? As of today, there are multiple countries internationally that have set the international precedent in order to get families reunified safely in their country. This includes cross-border couples, it includes children, it includes adult children. I asked the government directly, can the Government of Canada produce a timeline and plan for the rest of the voting Canadian public? Right now, it is completely legal for a Canadian to fly over to another country, get married to their committed partner, fly back into Canada. That exposes the Canadian twice to COVID, once there and on the way back. It also brings 2 people instead of 1 into Canada. If the government allows adult children and committed partners into Canada, that's 1 person coming in, 1 person to track, and 1 person to follow public health guidelines to keep Canadian families safe. An American fiance cannot drive in his own private car into Canada, but instead, the Canadian in the border town, she can drive 300 kilometers to the nearest airport, go into a crowded airport, into a crowded plane, fly into the United States, take a bus to get to the border town, and then do the same thing on the way back. Tell me, please be accountable Canadians, is that safe? Mental health has suffered. Families have suffered. Canadians have suffered. For 12 weeks, Advocacy for Family Reunification at the Canadian border have petitioned, emailed, mailed our ministers and our MPs in government and have had no response. We've had template responses, such as, we must keep Canadians safe. But if the dichotomy presented today is either keep your family safe and everyone perishes, or stay away from your family and everyone lives, then we say that dichotomy is untrue. There is a third path. Reunification safely, consistently, and compassionately. Today, our official House of Commons petition was presented with over 5,300 signatures of voting Canadians and permanent residents. The government has not responded. We have told the ministers that the current travel restrictions are, under Section 15 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, discrimination based on family status. The government has not responded. We want a collaborative, transparent, clear approach to family reunification. The government has not responded. Today, at this press conference, I publicly ask the Government of Canada to be a leader and show the rest of the world how a government can bravely be safe, consistent, and compassionate to its people in the face of a global pandemic. Very clearly, I ask that both orders in council expand the definition of immediate family as defined in the family reunification travel exemptions to include adult children and committed partners. I ask that a uniform, consistent method of assessment for people coming into Canada can be existing before they approach the border, as to not rely entirely on the assessment of one singular CBSA agent. I ask that this pre-approved compassionate exemption exist so that we are not told one thing before we approach the border and then told another thing once we get there. And lastly, I ask the Government of Canada within 30 days to produce a feasibility study into alternatives to the 14-day quarantine as it applies to family reunification. Right now, the best we have, and it's good, is the 14-day quarantine. However, the Government of Canada, our government, owes us the due diligence to at least look into whether or not there's another way to keep families together. This week, we launch our Faces of Advocacy campaign. So if the government will not listen to me, I hope they will listen and be accountable to all the voting Canadian families who have been separated due to the current travel restrictions. We will highlight every single one of them. If you feel disenfranchised, alone, or completely ignored by the current policies, please join us at facesofadvocacy.com or on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Faces of Advocacy. I do not believe that the government intentionally set out to keep families apart. But I know right now the government is intentionally being non-transparent, not being clear, and not allowing a conversation with stakeholders regarding family reunification, despite how urgent it is for so many. This is the story of family. This is the story of love. This is the story of facing fear and becoming a leader in creating a plan to face that fear safely, consistently, and compassionately. This is the story of a grassroots campaign asking their government to please look after them, as this has been an incredibly difficult time. This is the story of a young girl with cancer who cannot be with her fiancé. This is the story of a breastfeeding mother who cannot come into Canada to breastfeed her newborn. This is the story of a mother who died, unable to see her adult children. And this is the story of a mother who still has a chance. This is a story of advocacy and the faces of advocacy. This is the story of a government we ask to give us a plan, a timeline, and a hope. We are not asking for open borders. We are just asking to be together. My name is Dr. David Edward Poon. I'm founder of Advocacy for Family Reunification at the Canadian Borders. Please join us at facesofadvocacy.com. Thank you very much for your time and all the members of Parliament who are bravely standing with Canadians today.